When girls or women discuss feeling unsafe, experiences of sexism, or statistics around discrimination or violence, it's common for men to respond with, "Not all men," like, "Not all men harass women," or "Not all men are violent." This response misinterprets what the woman is trying to share, to be blaming all men, when in fact, she isn't. Nobody was claiming to be talking about all men in the first place. Research shows that most physical violence is committed by men. It's certainly accurate that 1, not all men are violent, and 2, violence and aggression is not innate within men. As in, violence and aggression is socialized and preventable. In fact, to be feminist is to advocate against stereotyping based on gender, and part of that is that men shouldn't be stereotyped as inherently violent. One needs to make a distinction between men and masculinity, with the latter being looked upon as conditioning, and thus can be consciously taught differently. To be feminist is to believe in the full humanity of all human beings, including men, and dismantle the structures which encourage violence on the basis of gender.
In trying to understand gender-based violence and hopefully find solutions that reside in us, it is imperative that we understand the root causes that allow for gender-based violence to occur. Part of this inquiry pushes us to ask, who is committing this violence? Who are the victims? What are the systems and practices at play that are both visible and invisible that foster this violence? And how to prevent those who learn to commit violence from being violent in the first place? It is a fact that so many women around the world are unsafe. It's even worse if you are a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, and as a result of this, conversations around gender-based violence are often about how men are the majority of people committing the violence. Saying not all men is basically a defensive attempt to say that I'm not the problem. It's natural to feel defensive and uncomfortable, given often we're not even aware of these larger patterns of violence and oppression and the problems with how we've been raised to see women. We also feel guilty and horrified to find out that so many of the women we love have experienced harassment or violence in some form or the other, and we had no idea. We have blind spots, and you understandably may not want to get lumped into the category of violent men, but instead of saying not all men, which is unhelpful and distracting, it's okay to sit with your discomfort, with being unaware. There's no need to defend yourself and make the discussion about yourself, instead of expressing empathy towards the person speaking to you. You can acknowledge that this is new to you. You can share that you'd like to be an ally to women, and you can acknowledge that there are certain patterns and root causes for men's violence against women that must be addressed.
When women share our individual stories, whether it's in private, one-on-one conversations, or public hashtags, it's in order to share how widespread these issues of violence are, and to invite others into the conversation to help try to solve the problem. Telling us not all men are violent does not help make things safer. Not all men also is a way of labeling women's safety concerns as irrational or illogical, when in fact, the vast majority of women have experienced abuse at the hands of men, and it is logical and reasonable to feel fearful. Sharing personally about our stories, instances of gender-based violence we've heard from others or have read on the news, and our pain surrounding these issues is not an attempt at male bashing. It's highlighting an experience even if it hasn't been one that you can personally relate to. It's an invitation to be part of a dialogue. It's a dialogue that is important because most women on earth are negatively affected, and a request to open your heart and empathize with these experiences and our understandable rage, sadness, fear, overwhelm. Anger with how boys are raised to be forced into the man box is not the same as being angry with boys and men. It is the love of boys and men and the belief in their capacity that drives our hope that men's violence against women can end. Personally, I've had to take ownership of the ways that I perpetuate patriarchy and violence as a woman. And part of being a feminist is ensuring that I create a healthier space for my nieces and nephews to grow, free from these boxes.
Identifying that gender-based violence is a social justice issue and recognizing the privilege that comes with being male in this world are paramount to looking at ways of finding solutions. Our privilege is also an opportunity to become allies and begins with framing the problem in its correct context. We acknowledge that patterns of violence are upheld by people of all genders. However, it is important to recognize that we live in a global patriarchal system which divides people into the man and women box based on whether we're born into male or female bodies. We need to begin being part of conversations around the systemic oppression of one group that follows from the patriarchal division of the society. The dialogue is not about blame. It's about taking responsibility towards creating a world that is more equitable and free. It's about questioning norms that allow people around the world to think it's okay to rape, it's okay to harass, it's okay to domestically abuse, throw acid, commit genital mutilation, restrict women's and girls' access to education, jobs, and a fair salary. It's about questioning structures that need us to have power over another and not recognize the strength of power with another. To be honest, when you say not all men, you're saying, I'm not that. Being a man who isn't a perpetrator of violence is not something that deserves a medal. Our allyship cannot be conditional. Our ego does not need to be pampered and flattered into feeling good about ourselves before we choose to listen and awaken to the reality of violence around us. We don't need to be showered with gratitude for not being a horrible human being. If we want the world to become a more equitable space, then we don't have the option of staying silent on gender-based violence, as our silence is a form of endorsement.